This is the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I'm Alice Stockton-Rossini. Thanks so much for being here. David Queirolo is currently a studio teacher for kid actors on TV and movie sets. He also uses his experience as a former firefighter to advise writers on TV shows about the subject, which brings us to his book, Sugar Pine Chronicles, the adventures and struggles of the first co-ed U.S. Forest Service wildfire cruise in California. Now, how long ago are we talking, David?
We're talking 74 to 81.
So it took them that long to allow women to work on these wildfires.
Yeah. Here's what happened. In the 72, the Equal Rights Amendment came out, ratified by California almost immediately, and a lot of other states too, especially the western states. But it never, still to this day, has not become a law.
I know.
It needed 38 states. But California took it a step further. They started hiring women in jobs. This is 1974 when that cruise started. Adam 12 did an episode in 1975, year after. They had heard about us, apparently, and they decided to have a woman in their show, become a field officer. And they had a tall woman, very beautiful. She was both feminine, she was also very strong, like an Olympic level athlete. And the title of the show was Women's Livers Meet Adam 12. That was the mindset then. Most women in the United States didn't think women should be doing this. And the women firefighters on the crew in 1974 got a lot of flack from women. What are you taking a man's job? What are you doing that job?
Yeah.
You're not safe doing that job. 1974, I was at Cal State Sacramento doing some grad work, and I heard about this fire crew. And so did Sarah. Sarah was a friend of mine, and then we had another person, Bruce McNitt. And the three of us went up to Pioneer Park, Nevada City, to find out about this fire crew. And it was around February 1974. They were putting this fire crew together, and they were going to let women on it. And nobody else was even thinking about that. So the crew formed with people from the Nevada City Grass Valley. So you had mountain people who were used to using chainsaws and, cutting their own firewood. And then you had college students like we were. There were a lot of women. Cal State Sacramento came in. Lois Richter came with them. Well, she made the fire crew. The other women didn't because she said they basically were smokers and out of shape. But Lois became actually the first crew leader on a fire crew with the Davis crews, Davis 1 and Davis 2. She was the crew leader for. We were all treated as equals on the crew. That's the thing. We didn't, it was very early on that we knew that they could do it. We were going up and down hills on the fires and they were having no problem. In fact, they probably had less problem than most of us because they weren't smokers. They were healthy. 3 or 4 of the women that we had lived up in the mountains and cut firewood all the time and used chainsaws. So we had women who knew what they were doing and were strong enough to do it. And for the first 2 years, we were the only crew that had women on it, 74 and 75. 76, we started seeing the Chico firecrackers and Chico fire breakers starting to do it. Davis was doing it because of our ex-crew member, Lois Richter, started the Davis crew. And half that crew, she said, was women when it started.
Let me ask you this. So when I'm reading your synopsis, and it sounds like you speak of a very specific incident. You were near a 30-foot hill, crews are lined up, they covered the area slowly, feeling the heat. Glancing at these 2 women, you thought this fire is not a problem, but the fire gods had a different message for us.
That was the first fire we went on, and we busted to the fire. We took military half tracks to get out there. There was a all Hispanic crew next to us. We were just doing mop up. It was just, easy peasy stuff, And then all of a sudden we saw a wind devil go through us, and it caught this bush on fire, and it went up the hill and into this valley of ancient juniper trees, huge things. And it created a mushroom cloud just like an A-bomb. I mean, it was in just minutes, with that dry field and that heat and the wind. And we started going towards the fire, and then our squad leader made a hard right, and he sat down, and he put his equipment down, he put his backpack down, and he put his head in the backpack and said, "This is going to be something." Because he knew there was no way a couple of hand crews were going to be able to fight a fire like that. And the next day we went into that valley, and there was just heat steaming everywhere. And all these trees had burnt down to their stumps. There was just white ash everywhere. And we spent the whole day there. We helicoptered this time we helicoptered to the fire. We walked into the fire, all the way through to the very end where it had stopped, about 2 miles away. And it had burned everything to the ground. The only thing left was a plant called squaw tea, and ants were coming out. Ants had survived this blaze. It was
Wow.
huge. It was basically what we call a mop-up job. But we learned a lot from that fire. One of the things, having Sarah around, because she had studied American Indians so much, she was always telling us about the places we were going to. And this book it transfers from the first women firefighters and their work with the Forest Service to learning a lot about the Native Americans in Northern California, because every community went to either had a Indian name or had an American settler's name who basically drove out the Indians. So this book transfers into a California history book from about the 1850s, from our experiences working on the fires. We went to the last national forest. I wrote a screenplay about that one, so I bet that out here too.
I think this would be a great movie.
Yeah, I get calls about 3 times a day for people that want to promote the book. And my main focus right now is to get it as a episodic and TV show. I work in the industry. I've given several copies of the books to writers, and they've come back to me and said, yeah, this is an episodic. It should be, you got a lot of episodes. You've got over 60 chapters. And I said, well, there's a lot more than that. I mean, these are just, a skeleton of what we did.
So your focus now is on possibly getting someone to pick this up.
Yep.
Yeah. Not so much doing book signings and that kind of thing.
Well, I'll do that. I don't mind.
It's very exciting stuff at a time when we really need it.
One of the things that's interesting in the story is we're talking about global warming. Global warming was happening back in the 70s. I mean, we had fires that are very similar to ones today. The one thing that seems to be different, there seems to be a lot more heavy winds in the fire in California, Northern California especially. But we had, the 77 season, we had almost 1 million acres of fire, a lot more in Nevada and Arizona. So we were fighting fires in those 3 states. And it was as bad as we've seen it here. So the approach to wildland firefighting is not water. We don't use a lot of water because you don't have it. You're out in deep forest, and you're not, you have to learn how to do containment lines around it and mop up right away. And but back in 77, there were so many fires. It was almost insane. I mean, there were what we call campaign fires of over 5,000 acres all over the state. But we fought fires every day. It means that manufacturing has gone, crazy, deregulation and stuff, and that's causing it and stuff. And that's part of it. But it was global warming was happening in the 70s too. And it's natural. It could be a natural thing too. I mean, it could be just nature being nature. And so, if you go back in history, you see, some of the worst fires were at the beginning of, the 20th century. So global warming, when you start using all the different fuels and stuff, carbon fuels, that certainly is part of it. But I think it's part of nature too.
All right, David, thank you for shedding light on a group of women I don't think a lot of people even knew about. Sugar Pine Chronicles, the adventures and struggles of the first co-ed U.S. Forest Service wildfire crews in California.
Have a good one. Have a good one.
Looking at the train station where he arrived in Michigan from Virginia as a little boy without a home, inspiration hit Vern Watson to write Against the Odds, a story of inspiration living the American dream. How old were you, Vern?
I was a child, 5 years old. The reason that we came here and became homeless or whatever, my father was in business and he had a partner in business, and it was a partner that had used one of his trucks. He had a truck that was for sale. He had a lumber business, and he was going to sell a load of lumber. And it had no insurance on it, no license plates, no nothing, and it was just sitting there for sale with a for sale sign on it. And the partner sent the truck out to deliver a load of lumber, and there was an accident, and it killed someone. And the driver didn't even have a driver's license, so they sold everything that we owned at public auction. He was sued, and so we had nothing. And in those days, in Virginia anyway, Today, if such a thing like that happens, they allow you to keep a car or a house or something. Whatever you can keep. They took everything you owned.
How many kids were in your family?
4 children. The youngest was 18 months old.
And what made you come to Michigan?
Well, evidently, my father must have talked to his sister. His sister said that he could come to Michigan. There were jobs in around the Detroit area, and of course, the economy was better wherever there was work.
Yeah.
So it was a place that a lot of people were coming during that time. Detroit was kind of in its heyday, more or less, in the 50s.
Mm.
So it was a possible place to come. Plus the big part was states have reciprocity or whatever they call it with one state to another.
Mm-hmm.
And Michigan would not garnish his wages here. And if he went to Pennsylvania, for instance, they would have. If he went to some of the Commonwealth states around Virginia, they would have just taken whatever he made the same. So,
Jeez.
He couldn't even work and make money.
Was your dad eventually able to get himself together?
Yeah, but I think it affected him. If if you read the book, you find out he was abusive. I think he was always paranoid, worried about losing everything he owned again. I think it just wrecked him. And of course, then I don't really know that much about him in World War II. I know he was. I think he probably, like a lot of military people, he was in the Marines. They invaded the South Pacific Islands and stuff on their way into Japan. And I think it was traumatic. All those things kind of together or whatever, I think left scars on him, And I say in the book, that I think he had emotional problems.
So what happened to you?
What happened to me? I grew up kind of, a pretty normal kid. Didn't realize how poor or difficult things were. It's just the environment around you. And then the big thing that probably changed my life was meeting a nice girl while we were still in high school. She became pregnant and we were seniors in high school. It says on the front cover of the book, that I was married and a father at 18. I mean, so we made the decision to get married. And I was only 17 years old and we waited for her. She's about 4.5 months older than me. And my father reluctantly gave me permission, and we found out we could get married in South Carolina at 17 with permission, and she waited to 18, and we left right after her birthday and got married. And that's really on our 50th wedding anniversary, we went back to all the places we had lived and worked and been in life, and that's what kind of brought the book forward. Where I had written stories over the years, I started compiling them and I made it into a book.
It must have been serendipitous for you to meet and to be together because you grew up together and you became successful together, it sounds like.
We did. Yep. In the book, there's a picture of our home today. We own our home. We had 5 children. 4 of them went to college. We paid for their college educations. We own our own home. And on the front cover of the book, it'll say it's living, it's a story of inspiration, living the American dream after the against the odds part. And that's what it is. I mean, it is. I mean, those things were difficult, hard, whatever. We got through it all. We did it together. We worked hard and we sacrificed and we did without stuff and whatever it took. But we wanted our kids to have a chance. Today, they have, good jobs, nice homes. I have a daughter that's 51. She just told me she's retiring in February.
You've got a very strong message in this book.
Yeah, it is. The thing that really made a difference, too, and the book alludes to considerably, is the fact that I became a Christian when I was 26 years old. And I did, even after we were married, I mean, I had a problem with alcohol. And I didn't realize how much it was, and it was getting progressively worse. I talk about a lot of accidents and injuries and all kinds of stuff that I had. And that was all a contributing factor, if not, the biggest contributor. And I was able to overcome that. I have a story about when I was converted, basically, and I threw away the last beer I ever put to my mouth on Labor Day weekend of 1976. That was a big change in life, and that is what brought success throughout my life.
And your wife stood with you. She didn't give up on you.
That's right.
A lot of people, this would have broken them. I don't know, but is it true? Do you think if I can do it, you can too? I mean, you've got to have a certain amount of strength and fortitude, and you have to really want to change. You have to want to do better.
That's correct. Absolutely. That's correct. And there's, many people. I had two brothers that I was raised with, and both of them had problems with alcohol. My oldest brother just passed away 4 weeks ago, cirrhosis of the liver. I have a younger brother, and he has problems with alcohol. He has throughout his life. My sister, that was 2 years younger than me, she struggled.
I'm sorry.
So, of the four of us, I guess I was the only one that was really successful from, that our children did well and don't have problems and own their homes and all those kind of things. Yeah.
That is success right there.
Yeah.
It really
exactly.
is. Did you write this book because you wanted your children and grandchildren to know where you came from? And
absolutely. That's I only intended it to be a manuscript to give to my family. And after the inspiration, the Michigan train station, I came up to the intersection at Michigan Avenue and 14th Street. I came from a church meeting on Sunday, July 8th, I think it was, of 2018. And when I stopped at the traffic light, I looked across there, and I just realized this is where I started from. This is where my story started from. This will be my book. This was my life. And I decided to make it a book and publish.
all right, Vern. Against the Odds, a story of inspiration, living the American dream. Thanks.
Well, thank you.
A chiropractor in Massachusetts, Miguel Fernandez, started writing as his frustrations grew with his profession and his direction in life. I think it's interesting. You call writing self-therapy, right? And you basically turned that into a book that you hope will help others. It is entitled Understanding the Moment, Focus on the Now, and Get the Most Out of Your Future.
I'd been through a lot of things, and I discovered that, I wanted to be a business owner, but I didn't like the aspect of the business that I was in.
What aspect?
Well, as a chiropractor, you're always waiting for your money. We do the work first, then we bill it out, and then we wait, sometimes 3 months, and then you're at the behest of an insurance company and they can say yes or no, or they'll come up with some excuse and then you have to rebill, and then you have a time limit. So sometimes you lose money based on the time limit. So it was bugging me a lot. So I had to really figure out whether or not I wanted to stay a business owner or just go work for someone else. And through that self-discovery, I started really just putting the groundwork in for this book. I used my experience and the experience of some colleagues. I wanted to write a book. It was something that had been on the back burner, on the shelf, for a long time. And then it was years after I'd closed my business and I started working for someone else, and I didn't like that guy. So I moved to a different job, and this place was wonderful. And it allowed me to actually have room to breathe and think And I started ruminating on things as I listened to, the gurus that talk about self-actualization and self-improvement, and it was sort of cathartic. And I was like, I got to write all this stuff down, because if I'm getting some use out of it, someone else can get a use out of it.
Well, you say that your book is going to show you how to look at who you are, understand yourself in the moment. What are you capable of experiencing, fresh, new, light? Do you take us through steps? I mean, how do you do that?
In the book, I talk about a snapshot of who you are, taking a look in the mirror and really understanding who you are in the moment. Because the moment that you are in is the most important. The time when you are the most powerful. It's the time you can make a decision, you can take an action, you can do everything you really need to do. It all occurs in that one moment. So you stand there in front of the mirror and take a snapshot, because that's the last time you're going to be that person ever. So if you ever look at that picture again, you're like, that's who I used to be. And based on that, you have to lay in the groundwork, the now. Always work in the now. Never work in tomorrow, never work in the yesterday. It's always now. You have to self-parent yourself. I talk about self-parenting in the book, where you have to be your own little voice. You have to be your own cheerleader. You have to be the one that says, oh, no, I've got to do that better. Oh, no, this activity is bad. I've got to do something else. So it's that aspect of the book that's the most enticing, because in the moment, you have the opportunity to be at your greatest or at your worst. Chiropractors have a tendency to look at people in a certain way. We see them as a whole, body, mind, and spirit, trying to get the nervous system back online to make the body do what it's supposed to do. So the goal is to get your choices back online, get your activities back online right now, so that tomorrow is better. Because if you can stack what you do today to make tomorrow better, it's just going to get better overall.
It's so hard to do, though.
It is. It's a skill. Just like getting up in the morning at a certain time of day. It's a skill. And it's something you have to work at. And it's a whole bunch of choices to create that skill. The guy that wrote Atomic Habits, he talks about it in his book, where you have to do something often enough to create a positive habit. And creating a positive habit is all about the moments where you make your choices. Habits are all about choice. I choose to get up at 4:30 and go to the gym. And you have to do that, almost 30 days, 40 days to create a positive habit. But it's all those little moments of choice that create the habit, the power that you actually have. I mean, no one is ever more powerful than now. And it's a wonderful aspect. And I wanted a book that could affect somebody who's just your regular guy, your 50-something-year-old dad that just wants a little better. This book is for them who don't have lofty aspirations. I mean, they can, but they don't need to have them. They just need something that gets them over that next hill, that next edge, the thing that will make them just a little bit better, and they can stand on that. Because it's the little moments that give you a leg up. And the more times you give yourself that little bit of leg up to create those positive habits, positive experiences, it'll allow you to get a better viewpoint of what's ahead. Also, sometimes when you're standing on a chair, you can look down and see a better aspect of the moment, where you are now. I'm a little guy. I'm about 5 feet tall. And I spend, I spend the world looking up for the most part. With my patients, with my car, everything is built for taller people. And every time I do something good or great in the moment that I'm in now, it's not about height anymore. It gives me a better perspective. And I'm not necessarily looking up now. I'm looking at my moment, my around, and I can take a better step forward. And not only that, my step forward, because I'm conscious of now, is better. And it'll build and build and build until you are living a better life in succession.
Is there a copy of your book in your office?
In my office, yes. I got a stack of them over there. I mean, my goal is to get it out there. I am working with the company from Fulton to promote the book, and then I have somebody out of Pennsylvania who I've known for a dog's age, who is going to start booking me some talks, and She's amazing. She's an author herself, and she's going to be helping me promote the book on that aspect, getting me into companies and giving some lectures about just being better. And I just wrote another book. It's along the same lines. It's about anxiety, and I do have a third book with a friend of mine, close friend, who is he is a social worker, and we're going to be working on the procrastination issue. I think that people procrastinate a lot.
A lot? How about a lifetime?
Oh yeah, and it's a habit. It's a habit, and it's I can remember the exact moment that I procrastinated for the first time, and it's actually profound because I can remember the exact moment I did it, and most people can remember the moment that they put something off for the first time, and we're going to explore it on a more rudimentary and daily life aspect to it, and try to we'll talk about the moment and how the moment's important in the elimination of procrastination from your life,
Right.
and things you can do otherwise. I mean, I do discuss some things that are the basis of eliminating procrastination in understanding the moment, and I think that this book will actually provide a primer for that one, which will be more like an intermediate step up, and you'll understand why procrastination is bad and why you shouldn't do it, and
Right.
things like that.
Great.
My goal is to help as many people as possible, and
I can hear that. I hear that in you. I really do.
there's so many people that they may not need a coach, but they need somebody to give them a little shove.
They can't get out of their own way.
Yeah. And I had that problem. I did. And I sat there and I kicked myself for not doing the right thing, even though I'd know what the right thing is.
Yes. We all have.
Yeah.
That's why you're where you are now.
And I read books. I've gotten to see some really cool guys talk a lot. And, it's a shame that not everybody has the same experience. And if I can write a book, or even, they can find me somehow, I'll talk their ear off about just getting stuff done.
All right, Miguel. Understanding the moment, focus on the now, and get the most out of your future. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
An ethnic studies scholar and consultant for the California Department of Ed, Malik Abdul-Khaliq credits writing for helping stay sane and relieve stress. Now he's published Sanguine Threads, a novel.
This is how I relax, and this is how I maintain that alter ego part of myself as a scholar.
Have you written before?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Matter of fact, as Sanguine Threads follows the development of one of the protagonists, one of the characters who emerged in a short story that I had written in 2014. I published it, and it was a small little book. However, I knew all along, and I think I just submerged that thought, but I knew all along that there'd be a coda, that there would be a development later on of said character. Her name is Ashley. And hence, we're seeing the culmination of such within Sanguine Threads.
Where did you get the inspiration for this book?
Oh boy. Okay, so as an ethnic studies scholar, I wanted to take aspects of what I share in the confines of the ethnic studies classroom. And the inspiration primarily came through conversations with some of my students, particularly as Ashley, one of the characters within Sanguine Threads. Societally speaking, she's represented as white. And within the course of my ethnic studies class, talking about ethnic groups, they're in their lands of origin, their trans-migratory experience in becoming Americans, and then some of the conflicts that align with the development of full Americanness. Some of my students would come to me after class and say, "Hey, Professor Malik, we didn't know it was like this, or how come I wasn't taught this K through 12? So as a scholar, I was like, well, let me put my pen to paper and start writing something. So hence, playing around with that idea and playing around with that composite character, if you will, came to light, Ashley, and hence Sanguine Threads. That's where I draw some of my inspiration. But I was asked that question before, where I draw my inspiration as a writer, and I like to consider myself just a living sponge, meaning that if I see something, or if I read an article within the newspaper or things of that sort, I have a way of thinking, hey, how can I be manifested in some type of tangential sense within maybe the course of a a chapter that's in development. That's part of a longer story.
So tell me about Ashley and Deirdre.
Okay, so Ashley is she's in her sophomore year. She's in her junior year of a university. One of the settings within this particular book takes place in Ohio. So they're attending a fictitious university within Ohio. Ashley is a junior there, and Deidre is an ABD in all but their dissertation. She's an anthropologist, PhD student. Now Ashley, this follows her because let me put it like this: the primary premise of the story, and I'm not going to give too much away, but the primary premise of the story is discoveries that these two individuals make about themselves by way of travel. Ashley travels back in time, if you will, not by way of a time machine, but a discovery of a long lost piece of writing, okay. If you will, that was buried away in an antique piece of furniture. And Deidre makes a grand discovery about herself by way of a physical travel. And she travels to the second setting within this book, and that is within the Caribbean, particularly Saint Martin and the island of Saba. So in her field of study, anthropology, she's commissioned by the Dutch government to develop some research to come to the bottom of an investigation that's being conducted.
So how are these two characters related?
They're roommates at the university. However, they used to know each other a couple years prior, because Deidre had stayed with Ashley's family for a short period of time when Ashley was living in Irvine. And Deidre was on her way back home from some field research that she was conducting in the Caribbean itself.
So we're looking for truer depths of self-identity that are going to be revealed according to your synopsis. Does an unexpected big lump sum of money enrich Ashley's knowledge of herself and family? And does a curator position as an anthropologist help shed light on historical truth and familial ties for Deirdre? Tell me, what's at the heart of this story? What are we trying to do here? What are we looking for?
So what's at the heart of the story, I think it was encapsulated best within that synopsis right there, is a discovery of self and an exploration of identity. So the second chapter of the book opens up with a meeting between Ashley and a representative from a commission out of Ohio. And this commission out of Ohio is a recovery commission. This is how Ashley actually finds out that she is to be a recipient of this grand lump sum of money. She doesn't know about it beforehand, but this commissioner contacts her, and through the course of this Zoom meeting, this commissioner is introducing himself, Mr. Hernandez, to her and sharing with her that by way of an inheritance, she's coming into possession of more than $15,000. And how she gets to the root of this is she brings this issue up with her mother, and her mother skirts around the periphery because her mother knows the true history of their family. So during the course of one of the conversations after that conversation with the commissioner, Ashley's trying to suss some meaning out from her mother, and her father is in the background. And her father just glibly says, "Why don't you check the piece of furniture, in your room, her desk?" When she checks the desk, she comes to find out that there was a long lost piece, not lost, but it was lost on everybody else except for her mother and father. But there was a long lost journal that had been maintained by her great 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 grandmother. And when she comes to find the journal and explores the pages of the journal, she comes to find out a great deal about herself, who she actually is, societally speaking. I don't want to take too much away from it, but the first chapter of the book is entitled One Drop. And I'll leave it just that, because there's so much that unfolds, and there's so many ups and downs and peradventures waiting for the reader. Now, Deidre, on the other hand, in the course of a conversation, she's about to graduate, and she's contacted by fictitious university in Saba, one of the islands off of Saint Martin, and she's contacted by one of the government commissioners who wants to draw from her experience as being an anthropologist, as well as her knowing the local language Papiamento, because she stayed there before and she's conducted some research. She comes to stay with a host family who she stayed with before. Now, when the book opens up, it has her remembering some of the conversation, because she's looking at a picture that she took with the host family. And the matriarch of the host family says to her, we had a nice time here, such sanguine threads.
Oh.
And whether the host matriarch was alluding to that they were family relations, or that there was a similarity that they shared with respect to their physiognomy, or or the phenotype, or their or some of the mannerisms or things of that sort. That is sussed out in the book
Okay.
also. So that's how we actually get the ball rolling, because this matriarch says, "Oh, there's sanguine threads that we share, filial ties, or maybe." So she comes to find out on her grand experience there that some of the questions that are asked of the elder matriarch has Deidre thinking, well, am I related to some of these individuals here?
Yeah. Okay. So you are surrounded by people who I'm sure know that you're an author. Are you talking about your book? Are you doing any book signings?
Oh, yes. Some of my colleagues are teachers at some of the local schools, local colleges. So these friends are reaching out, hey, can you come and speak on, the premises of your book? So yeah, I've been to a couple of speakings, a couple of soft book launches, and then I have another grand event that's coming up in one of the libraries in Pasadena, and that's going to be February the 11th.
That sounds great. You're in a really good position as an author. So many authors, if they want to reach an audience at the college level or, the preschool level, elementary school level, whatever, if you don't have those ins, it's difficult.
Yes.
You have to admit you're a step ahead.
I fortuitously speaking, I am. This one of the times where I'm like, oh, I guess there is some alignment with respect to the constellation. everything's panned out. But when I was heavy into the development of the story, and I wrote this over a period of 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Some of the storyline also deals with aspects of settler colonialism too. And settler colonialism is studied by Deidre when she's commissioned again to conduct this study in St. Martin in Saba. So with that being said, these are some of the tangential topics that I'm asked to speak about in light of my book being released. So
Yeah.
Hey, Malik, this seems to be a catch-all.
All right, before you go, any advice for aspiring writers?
Reading much. And just listening, and because those seem to work for me. I write poetry as well as fiction, nonfiction, but I'm curious to the degree where I like to see myself as maybe ear jockeying some conversations that are going on, picking up the cadences of how people talk, and just using that as a template, if you will, to maybe take up another character, within the outline of a book that I'm working on or a piece that I'm working on. And then also just one more piece of advice to an up and coming author, or an author just very, very veteran-like, and they probably know this, just staying true to your craft and trying to write every day.
Great advice, Malik Abdul-Khaliq. Sanguine Threads, a novel. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we enter the sci-fi fantasy segment of our program. Really, we just got a couple of books here that are going to take you out of this world. And we begin with B.P. Wolf. She loves the fantasy world and decided to become part of it with her book, Ashilia, Coming of Ash.
So it actually started as a dream. Because I have my imagination goes wild. And it was one morning I woke up and it was the very first part of the first chapter, and I'm like, I should write this down. And that was back when I was in high school, and I started it, and then I was like, I'm gonna keep going with this because I had a friend who was like, you need to write more of this. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I stopped for a while, and then I met my husband, who's my current husband, and at the time he's like, well, why isn't this finished? Why did you hand this to me and I can't read the rest of it? What?
How long ago were you in high school?
I graduated 2010.
Okay, so not that long ago. So then what happened?
So off and on, I just wrote in my spare time, and then I decided to take the writing challenge where you write 50,000 words in 1 month. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to write 50,000 words in 1 month. Ended up going from 30,000 words all the way to 90,000 words on my story and finished it. And then I'm like, you know what? I finished it. Now it's actually time to publish. So I spent the next 2 weeks finding a publisher and found Fulton. And the lady at Fulton was really awesome, and I really liked her energy. I'm like, yeah, we're going to go with Fulton. We're going to publish this.
So once you really made up your mind, everything just kind of fell into place.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of my superpowers is I have ADHD. And so when I finally decide to do something and get started on it, I get really hyper-focused, and I'm able to do it very quickly.
Good for you. Tell me this story.
Yeah. So Ashalia is the first book of a 3-part series. It's the start of Ash's journey. She ends up being pulled to a new world with her current husband, or her mate, depending on which world you're talking about, but her current husband. And she ends up in the middle of a rebellion, fighting to save all the verses from darkness. Once she's there, she discovers that she's magical, which she didn't know. And she's like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And she goes through the battle to free their world first from tyranny. And then as the series progresses, she gets to fight all the new bad guys with her friends that she meets along the way. She builds fantastic friendships, learns more about herself and her family, and gets to find out that she isn't who she thought she was, and she gets it's a growing experience as she goes along with all of her friends. They all find out all new things after she comes along, and they're like, wait, what is happening? And they're like, how did we ever survive without you?
Well, it says in your synopsis that Michael, Doc, and Patrick are always on her case, saying, you got to control your emotions. Her powers are controlled by her emotions. What are her powers? What are they?
Everybody can tap into the magic well. There's a vast well of magic that you can tap into, and some people are better at like offensive magic. Some are better at defensive magic. Some are healers, and Ash just kind of happens to be all of the above. So you remember the scene in Harry Potter where Harry comes into the Weasley's house and there's stuff flying around everywhere. She's got like the whole house is magic.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes. So that's kind of the basis of their magic. They can pretty much do anything they want so long as they have the magical stamina to be able to do that. And magical stamina is from practice of using their magics, physical energy, and their soul energy.
You say her life is ended.
Yes, her current life, her life as a human or as a mortal has ended. And then she starts a new journey. Everything changes. It's the end of the world she knows, and then moves into a new world.
And it's a world where she meets up with assassins, a fugitive that was being hunted.
So her husband, James, she actually met before she found out all this stuff, is he had fled to Earth to escape being killed by when he defaulted.
Okay.
And he found her. She's his mate, which means she's his soul partner. And so he pursues her even though he knew it was dangerous, and ends up marrying her. And he's like, well, maybe I'll just hide out. And then his past catches up with them, which is what pulls them back into the other world.
Okay. And you say they're assassins of some kind?
Yes. So the Cerberus technically are glorified assassins.
Okay.
They are sent out by the Emperor to collect people for his armies or get them out of the way.
This sounds like it would be a great video game.
Yeah, I played a lot of Final Fantasy growing up. A lot of role-playing video games. I watched a lot of fantasy movies, and read a lot of fictional books.
Are you in contact? There's a lot of people online that are into this stuff, in the role-playing, and
all of my friends are pretty much into role-playing and cosplaying. I have a whole group. We like to go to Ren fairs and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I could see this at Comic-Con, no problem.
Oh, absolutely. When I was first venturing on this a few years ago, I had submitted parts of it to editors, and they're like, this could be a movie.
Yeah. How are you telling people about it?
I have a lot of friends who help me go over Facebook and help promote on Facebook. In person is just when people start talking to me about stuff, I'm like, actually, I just published a book.
Yeah.
I actually did my first signing with my good friend Sue down at Barjon Books. It went fantastic. most of the people that came down to buy books were just my friends and get them signed. But we had 3 different people who had just walked in to check stuff out, and they're like, "Oh, there's an author signing here, cool." And they asked me about it, and they bought the book, and I was really happy. One of them, I got to sign it to their daughter, she's just super adorable. So she picked the pink pen to sign with.
That's great. That's great. And now you got 2 more books you have to produce.
So the second one is actually done. I just need to publish.
Okay.
So I'm just waiting on that. I went through and the second one's done, and I've already started on the third.
Great.
It's hard once the story starts flowing to stop it.
Now, at this point, does it still come to you in dreams, or are you just able to sit down?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get stuck and I have to wait a few days before I can go forward, because the way my brain works, it's like the character is telling me the story.
Mm.
And so sometimes they're quiet and they're like, you know what? We're not ready to talk about this part yet.
What's your greatest hope for this?
That it takes off and people enjoy it as much as I enjoy it. That it's a story that can help people escape from the day-to-day everything that they have to deal with.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, is there any moral to the story here? Is there any lesson to be learned?
Oh, there's lots of little lessons.
Yeah.
I primarily identify as pagan,
Okay.
but I don't really follow any specific religion or pantheon.
Okay.
So there's all sorts of little tidbits in there that I've learned myself along the way that my characters then reciprocate.
For instance?
One of them is being patient.
Mm.
Learning to be patient, even though you're frustrated with what's going on. You know you have the capability, but you're like, this isn't working, and you just have to be patient and really work at it. So like when Ash first gets to Haven, she's like, I don't understand what's going on, and you keep telling me that I'm dangerous, and I don't know what you mean. And she ends up accidentally psychically attacking Patrick. She hits him with a psychic attack, and he has to shield himself. And she's like, did I just do that? Maybe I am dangerous. And it's a realization that maybe somebody else does know more than I do right now.
That's a rough one. That's a rough one.
Right?
Yeah.
Being humble enough to learn from somebody else.
Fair enough, BP Wolf. Ashelia, Coming of Ash. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Next up, Erebus by Douglas Small. Proof. Good things take time, right, Doug?
I've been thinking about writing this book for several years now, and I've always tried to start it, but I would get a page or maybe a paragraph into it, and I would just delete it because I just no, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to write it. But one day I just sat down and was like, you know what, I'm going to sit down and actually write this book. And then I got the first chapter done. I showed it to my wife, and she's like, you need to finish this, and you need to get this published. It's like, okay.
Did you ever write before?
Not really. I would come up with stories in my head when I was a kid, but no, I never sat down and said let me write a story by hand. This was my first book that I actually finished.
Well, I mean, it sounds like some pretty serious stuff is going on. Desperation grips humanity in this far future. I mean, where did this come from?
It came from my love for science fiction and kind of an epic struggle. Humanity is up against this terrible enemy that's constantly attacking them, and their worlds have been taken from them and stolen and destroyed, and their homes have been lost, and they finally come together and unite under this one captain who's figured out a way on how to finally beat these aliens. And then that's where the story picks up, and it's him and his ragtag crew coming up with different ways on how to beat them and win battles.
Your main character is Captain Sean Mallory.
Yeah.
You open the book and it's just a mess. It's a mess.
It is.
And he's got to somehow bring it all together. Where does he begin?
Well, first he's been fighting this war for about 12 years, and he's sat back and finally figured out what is the enemy doing and what are we doing wrong. And he comes up with a way and proposes it. He comes up with a way to minimize losses and maximize gains, at least on the battlefield and also in spaceship battles. He comes up with a way to pitch this idea to the admirals, which they of course reject, and he shows them in a battle that he is involved in on how it would work. And then finally, and it does work, and then they agree to it, and that's when the tides starts to turn.
What kind of aliens are they? What is it that they want?
Well, that's the big mystery, at least in the first book. What do they want? They come out of nowhere and they start attacking the humans. They start saying like their worlds are theirs now, and they what the aliens that they are, they're basically gigantic crocodiles in gladiatorial armor, and they got these laser guns, and it's really crazy stuff. And you don't really know what they want until near the end of the book, and then possibly into the second book that I'm writing currently. You'll figure out what they currently want, and then finally get a chance to see the big bad guy who's been operating from the shadows, and how he's always one step ahead of the humans, it seems like.
Does he read minds?
No, he has, I won't give too much away, but he does have methods on how he's able to gather information, and how he uses that information to his factions to stay one step ahead.
Then we go into the second book.
Yeah, I wanted that to be the kind of like the Empire Strikes Back of the series. Like, so the first book, the humans start to turn the tide. They start winning, and they start winning regularly. And when the second book comes around, the enemy comes up with a new way of doing battle themselves, and then they turn the tide against the humans again.
Is there a lesson to be learned here?
Yes, yes, definitely. It's definitely be careful what you wish for, because when he finally does get his ability, Sean Mallory does, when he finally does get his ability to lead the troops into battle and to turn the tide, he has to sometimes makes dealings with or questionable choices that could lead to damages and death upon of his crew. And it kind of tells like, hey, like, be careful what you wish for, and also be careful not to lose yourself when pursuing a goal.
Are you engaged with other people online that are kind of into this sci-fi fantasy stuff, into the role playing, the video games? There's like a whole community.
Yeah, I try to be as much as I can, obviously, because I kind of had to write this book part-time, because I do my job during the day, and unfortunately my job requires me to be on the computer all day. So the last thing you want to do at the end of the day is jump right back on the computer and do some more online stuff where you're talking to people and you're writing a book. But I try as best as I can. And yes, I put messages out on Facebook, kind of like saying, hey, you guys might want to check this one out, or this check this adventure book out, or check this science fiction book out.
Yeah, does that work? Do people actually respond?
Yeah, usually it does. I get several comments saying like, oh yeah, I'll check it out, and then with me and my wife doing that, and we also go through another company that helps me market the book as best we can.
Oh, good. So what happens when the series is over?
Well, it's hopefully by the time it's over, it'll be a nice, happy ending. I wish to tie all the little stories that I've created throughout the book up in a nice knot and put the characters where they need to be it either they've achieved their goal or they live in paradise.
Oh, I like that. Can I live there?
Yeah, exactly. You can.
All right, Douglas Small, Erebus. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Donald Kidrowski says he has seen and experienced things a lot of us never have, and he is convinced he's a chosen one with visions of the past and future he can't deny. The name of his book, The Universe in Pristine Condition. Now, you claim you have had experiences with aliens.
I have, and I can't say that I see them directly, but I see them with my third eye.
I've heard about the third eye. It's not a literal third eye. It's like a sensory or...
Right. It's basically an extra sense.
And what have you seen with your third eye?
Well, I mean, I've had things where I wake up where I'm diagonal on the bed, which, by the way, I don't move a whole lot when I go to sleep.
Okay.
So waking up diagonal on the bed, or one night I woke up with my head off the bed, across the bed.
So you're convinced that because you wake up and you're across the bed, that aliens must have done that to you?
Well, I'm convinced that something happened during the night.
So you talk about how they basically came to you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that I'm clairaudient. You know what that means?
No.
Clairaudient means it means you're able to hear things and know things from hearing things. That, and I have telepathy. And telepathy, I had learned telepathy early on when I was waking up. And my guides talk through telepathy.
You talk about a person being put into a made-up body, a contract holding one person accountable, immortality, aliens put through torturous conditions to get to the point where they sent a person to Earth.
Yes.
And they want to help the human race.
Yes.
And it's a plan that came from 8,000 years in the future.
Yes.
And this information came to you through telepathy.
All of it, yeah.
And so when you got this information, you decided you had to write a book about it.
Well, it wasn't so much that. It was what really started the book was I knew that when I was a child,
Okay.
there was something about when I was really young, okay? And there were no baby pictures before 3 years old, okay? And through telepathy, I was shown that I was brought here from a ship.
So you are the person that the aliens sent to Earth.
Right.
And you know things about the past, present, and future of where our universe is headed.
I've been shown that, yes.
Where are we headed?
Well, if everything follows that timeline that I outlined, humanity itself will be leaving. Every person on the face of the earth. And it has to happen that way in order for the mess to get cleaned up.
It's like right before, Noah's Ark.
Right.
And according to the Bible, the Lord just got rid of everybody and said, okay, we're going to start over again.
Right. But see, here's the thing. In Revelations, it talks about a new heaven and a new earth, and the old earth will pass away. Okay. Now, I understand that people think, well, that isn't literal. It indeed is literal, because if you look at where it talks about the New Jerusalem,
Okay.
now that city is 1,400 miles wide, 1,400 miles long, and it specifically says it's in the shape of a cube. So it's 1,400 miles high. What do you think would happen if that thing landed on this planet with a diameter of 10,000 miles?
I can't even imagine.
It would stop it dead. The rotation would stop because 1,400 miles high would stick way up in the air, and it would stop the rotation. There's no way possible for that thing to land on this planet.
So, is this a warning? Is this book a warning to us?
Some of it can be taken as a warning, but it's trying to tell people that the planets are going to be replaced. That's what I've been shown. This planet will be replaced, and the new planet will be called the New Earth.
Okay. Have you found like-minded people?
I have talked to many people who have other ideas like me, but not anywhere near the detail.
Obviously, you want people to read this book.
Yeah.
How are you finding people who might be interested?
Well, being a truck driver, when I travel, I've told people about my book, and a lot of people are ordering the book.
Okay. It's funny because I talked to a trucker once who told me that when he goes to the truck stops, he opens up the back of his truck and he does book signings. I thought, that's a great idea.
But I mean, I believe a lot of books have been sold just by telling people about my book.
Okay. Are you going to keep writing, Donnie?
Actually, I was working on the prequel. And the prequel, it goes into, it's not only does the plan come from 8,000 years into the future, but the 8,000 years into the future was a different timeline.
Okay.
And
interesting.
And what happened on that timeline is everything that happened in this book, but when they put the universe in pristine condition, they all of a sudden started a universal war.
This is in your prequel?
Yes.
All right. Well, maybe we can talk about that when you publish it.
Yep.
All right. Donald, thank you.
Is there anything else you wanted?
That's it.
All right.
I have enough for a book. I could write a book about our interview. Donald Kidrowski, The Universe in Pristine Condition. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Reader House Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.